The legend of the Amazons tells of warrior queens so devoted to battle that they would cut off a breast to better fire a bow. It's a brutal, shocking image. But for one of their greatest queens, Penthesilea, the real story isn't one of self-mutilation for the sake of war. It's a story of profound, soul-crushing guilt and a desperate search for an honorable death. This is the tragic tale of the warrior queen who went to Troy not to win a war, but to die in one. In the massive, messy world of Greek mythology, full of heroes, monsters, and meddling gods, few figures are as compelling or as heartbreaking as Penthesilea. She was a queen, a warrior, and a daughter of the god of war himself. She was also a woman haunted by a single, unforgivable mistake. Her story crashes into the blood-soaked final days of the Trojan War, a conflict already 10 years deep in death and despair. But Penthesilea didn't show up at the gates of Troy looking for glory or gold. She came seeking an end to the grief that was eating her alive, an end that, for an Amazon, could only be found in the heat of battle, facing the deadliest opponent she could find. This is not just the story of a warrior. It's the story of a huntress haunted by the ghost of her own sister, a queen who led her warriors into a foreign war for reasons that were deeply personal, and a woman whose final moments would shake the greatest hero of the age, Achilles, to his very core. We're going to the plains of Troy to unravel the life of Penthesilea, the warrior, the queen, the sister, and the woman who sought death as her final, tragic redemption. To understand what drove Penthesilea, you have to understand the world that made her. She was an Amazon, part of a legendary all-female society of warriors living on the fringes of the Greek world near the Thermodon River. They were known as the Daughters of Ares, the god of war, and Penthesilea was supposedly one of his favorites. Her mother was Otrera, the first and most revered Amazon queen, and her sisters were legends themselves, Antiope, Melanippe, and the famous Hippolyta. The Amazons were a society built on strength, skill, and sheer independence. They were master horsewomen and peerless fighters. Their weapon of choice was often the deadly labri, or double-headed battle axe, a weapon some stories say Penthesilea herself invented. They were a force of nature, a direct challenge to the patriarchal world of the Greeks, who saw them with a mix of fear and fascination. And leading them was Penthesilea, a queen described as wise, skilled, and strikingly beautiful. But under all that armor, Penthesilea carried a wound much deeper than any sword could make. The stories pieced together from fragmented epics tell of a hunting accident, a day that started like any other, with the thrill of the chase. Penthesilea, a master with a spear, was hunting deer with her beloved sister, Hippolyta. You can almost picture it, the crisp air, the focused silence of two sisters hunting as one. A deer is spotted, a spear is thrown. But in a moment of tragic miscalculation, or maybe a cruel twist of fate from the gods, the spear missed its target. It didn't hit a deer. It hit Hippolyta. The spear throw was an accident, but the result was absolute. Her sister was dead by her hand. In the ancient Greek world, spilling the blood of your own family was one of the worst things you could do, a stain on the soul that was said to call down the Furies, relentless goddesses who punished such crimes. For Penthesilea, the guilt became a living thing, a shadow that never left her side. She had inherited her sister's throne but felt completely unworthy of it. Sleep brought no peace, only nightmares. How could she lead her people when she was so consumed by her own failure? For a warrior queen of the Amazons, there was only one path to purification, one way to silence the guilt, an honorable death in battle. She couldn't just take her own life. That was a coward's way out. She had to fall in a blaze of glory against a worthy foe to finally earn her peace. And across the sea, there was a place where that could happen. A city under siege, a war of titans, a place where the greatest warriors of the age were gathered, a place where a death worth having could be found. That place was Troy. And so, driven by a grief so powerful it blotted out her will to live, Penthesilea gathered 12 of her finest warriors and set her course for the war. She wasn't going to save Troy. She was going to find the man who could finally kill her. Penthesilea and her 12 Amazons arrived at Troy in its darkest hour. The city was broken. Their champion, Prince Hector, had been killed by the demigod Achilles. The Trojans' morale was completely shattered. The Greek armies, camped outside their walls for 10 long years, could smell victory. Into this despair rode Penthesilea. Her arrival was like a lightning strike. Here was a daughter of Ares himself, a queen of the legendary Amazons, radiating power. To the Trojans, it was a miracle. The old King Priam, his heart shattered from losing his son, saw her as a savior. He welcomed her and, as was custom for someone stained with blood guilt, formally purified her of her sister's death. He promised her treasure and honor, but Penthesilea wasn't there for gold. She was hunting a different kind of prize. The morning after she arrived, the Trojan battlefield was changed forever. The truce for Hector's funeral was over. Penthesilea put on her armor, said to be a gift from her father Ares, and led her small band of Amazons out of the city gates. She didn't wait for the Trojan army. She was the charge. What the Greeks saw must have been terrifying, a storm of female warriors, moving with a grace and ferocity they had never seen. The Roman poet Virgil would later write of her, "The ferocious Penthesilea, gold belt fastened beneath her exposed breast, leads her battle lines of Amazons, a warrioress, a maiden who dares to fight with men." Penthesilea was a force of nature. She was her grief for her sister made into a weapon. The epic poem Post-Homerica by Quintus Smyrnius, which fills in the story after Homer's Iliad, describes her battlefield prowess in brutal detail. She was a whirlwind of destruction. She killed 8 Greek warriors one after the other. When one of her own, the Amazon Clone, was struck down, Penthesilea flew into a rage, found the Greek soldier responsible, and cut his arm clean off with a single swing of her axe. She was a blur of deadly motion, using a spear, an axe, and a bow. The Greeks, who had faced monsters and giants, were thrown into complete disarray. This wasn't a normal battle. This was a personal, raging inferno. For every Greek she cut down, she was striking at the memory of her own failure. Every life she took was a penance for the one she had accidentally stolen. Her sisters in arms fought and died beside her, but Penthesilea was the center of the storm. She wasn't just fighting, she was searching. Her eyes scanned the field, looking past the grunts for the champions. She was hunting the best of the best. She wasn't just trying to win the day for Troy. She was looking for an opponent worthy of giving her the honorable death she so desperately wanted. She needed an escape from her pain, and that escape had to be carved by the hands of a legend. She cut down foe after foe, a queen on a suicidal quest for peace. The Greeks were terrified but also awestruck. They had heard stories about the Amazons, but this was myth made real. But as the day wore on, as the field became littered with bodies, Penthesilea knew she hadn't found what she came for. There was one name that stood above all others. One warrior whose skill was unmatched, whose rage was as legendary as his strength. A man who, like her, was the child of a divine being. The man who had killed Hector. Achilles. To die by the hands of a lesser man would be an insult, but to find her end at the hands of the greatest warrior alive, that would be an honor. That would be peace. And so, with her heart full of grief and her hands stained with blood, Penthesilea fought her way across the battlefield, hunting for the one man who could grant her final wish. Achilles had been watching. He saw the Amazon queen tear through his army. He saw her skill, her speed, and her seemingly bottomless rage. He saw a warrior who fought with the ferocity of a cornered lion. He was, by all accounts, captivated. Here, finally, was a challenge. After killing Hector, the war had grown stale. The remaining Trojans were no match. But this woman, she was different. He moved to face her. The chaos of battle seemed to fade away as the two greatest warriors on the field finally locked eyes. The son of a sea nymph against the daughter of the war god. The clash was titanic. Penthesilea threw her spear, but it glanced harmlessly off the legendary shield of Achilles, the one made by the god Hephaestus himself. She threw another, boasting that her father Ares would see her victorious. Achilles simply met her charge. The fight was a blur of bronze and a symphony of violence. Penthesilea was fast and deadly, but Achilles was something else entirely. He was the living embodiment of war, nearly invincible. The duel was fierce, but its outcome was almost certain from the start. With one final, decisive thrust, Achilles drove his spear through her breastplate. As she fell from her horse, mortally wounded, he caught her, and in that moment, as he held her, he pulled off her helmet. And he saw her. He saw not just the warrior who had challenged him, but the woman underneath. And as he looked into her dying eyes, one of the most famous tellings of the story, from the poet Quintus Smyrnaeus, says that Achilles fell in love. It was a sudden, devastating, and hopeless love, born in the exact same instant as her death. The goddess Aphrodite herself was said to have made her beautiful in death. Just so Achilles could be pierced by the arrow of love and grief. Achilles, the unstoppable killing machine of the Greeks, was shattered by remorse. He had just killed the one person who had, in a single moment, captured his heart. He had granted her wish, but in doing so, he had given himself a new, terrible wound. But this sudden show of compassion didn't go over well with his fellow Greeks. Nearby stood a soldier named Thersites. The Iliad describes him as an ugly, foul-mouthed man who loved to mock his superiors. Seeing Achilles weeping over the body of an enemy, Thersites started to taunt him. He accused Achilles of weakness, of being seduced by a corpse. And in some versions, Thersites did something unforgivable. He took his spear and gouged out Penthesilea's eyes. Something inside Achilles snapped. The grief and love he felt erupted into volcanic rage. He turned on Thersites. With a single punch, Achilles hit him so hard that he killed him instantly. The act was shocking. Achilles had just killed a fellow Greek soldier in a rage over the body of an enemy queen. This caused a massive rift in the Greek camp. Thersites was a cousin of another great hero, Diomedes, who was furious and demanded justice. The conflict got so bad that Achilles had to sail to the island of Lesbos to be ritually purified of the murder by Odysseus before he could fight again. Penthesilea's death didn't bring victory or glory. It brought chaos. It sowed dissent among the Greeks and only deepened the war's tragedy. Achilles, the hero, was now haunted by two deaths. The woman he loved the moment he killed her, and the man he killed for disrespecting her memory. The warrior queen had found her end, but the price of that end rippled outwards, leaving behind a legacy of grief, rage, and a love story as brutal as it was brief. In some versions of the story, the enraged Diomedes dragged Penthesilea's body and threw it into the river Scamander. But Achilles, overcome with grief, pulled her from the water and gave her a proper, honorable burial. He had given her the death she came for, and now he would give her the respect she had earned. Penthesilea's story didn't end there. It became a powerful and enduring part of the Trojan War myth. She was remembered not just as a fierce warrior, but as a symbol of female strength and tragic heroism. Her story was told and retold for centuries. So what about that myth from the title? the one about Amazons cutting off a breast to shoot arrows. That story became attached to the Amazons as a people, but not specifically to Penthesilea. Historians think it came from a simple misunderstanding of their name. A Greek folk belief connected the name Amazon to the words amazos, meaning without breast. But nearly all ancient art, vases, sculptures, you name it, shows Amazon warriors, including Penthesilea with both breasts. Archaeological discoveries of female warrior graves in the lands of the Scythians, the real-life basis for the Amazon myths, show no evidence of this ever happening. The story was likely a Greek invention to make these powerful foreign women seem even more alien and intimidating. Penthesilea's real story is far more human and tragic than that brutal myth. She wasn't a woman who mutilated her body for war. She was a woman whose soul was mutilated by grief, who used war as a way to end her own suffering. She's a testament to the idea that even the strongest warriors can be driven by the most vulnerable human emotions: guilt, sorrow, and a desperate need for peace. Her legacy is a complex one. She was an inspiration, a cautionary tale, and a romantic figure. Her final, tragic moment of love and death with Achilles became a famous subject in art. She was a warrior who, by seeking to die, achieved a strange kind of immortality, forever remembered as the queen who fought not for a city, but for the salvation of her own haunted heart. The story of Penthesilea is just one of the countless tales that make up the rich, complex world of Greek mythology. If you were captivated by the tragic journey of the Amazon Queen, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more dives into history and myth. And let us know in the comments, who is your favorite, lesser-known hero or heroine from the ancient world? We'd love to hear their stories. Penthesilea found what she was looking for on the plains of Troy. She found an opponent worthy of her skill, and a death that, in her culture, was honorable. But her story shows us that honor and tragedy are often two sides of the same coin. She was a queen defined not by her crown, but by her grief. A warrior remembered not for her victories, but for her final fated defeat. She stormed into the greatest war of her age as a force of destruction, only to find a moment of profound, unexpected connection in the instant of her death. The tale of Penthesilea is a powerful look at how behind the myths of gods and monsters lie the deeply human stories of love, loss, and the desperate search for redemption.